Do you remember the time when I was talking about flaw in our code? It is a perfect time to discuss about that flaw. What is that flaw? Actually, in automation world, it is generally considered a bad practice to create a driver instance and storing it in a reference variable of same type. What do I mean by that? If I'm creating an instance of Chrome driver, then I should not store it in a reference variable of Chrome driver itself. Aryan, is there anything wrong with this piece of code? Because we earlier saw this thing that it was working absolutely fine. So the answer is there is nothing wrong with this line, but it is not a good practice to follow. Why? Because by declaring the driver reference variable type as Chrome driver, you are restricting your automation script ahead to only run the script in Chrome browser only. Suppose if you want to change the browser, then you have to change your entire script. So let's understand about the flaw using one example. Suppose I created a function public void open URL, and what this function will do, this function will help me to open a URL. So to open a URL, I want one thing, that is the URL itself that I want to open. So okay, I will user will give me this URL, and one thing that I want is I want a driver instance. So first I decided that I want to open Chrome browser. So what I will do is I will simply write Chrome driver, and now here what I will do is to open a browser I will use get method. We know this thing, right? So I will simply write driver.get, and whatever the URL user has told me to open, I will simply open that URL here. So if I simply change this thing here and I call open URL function, open URL, I have to make this function as static. Okay. And I will simply pass the driver instance. Okay. So if I will run this piece of code, then you will see that I can successfully open google.com on my Chrome browser. And this is something which we know so far. But now suppose I decided that, okay, I want to open Edge browser. So what you will do, you will change everything here. You will write Edge driver, and again you will write here also Edge driver, right? And you have to change here in the function as well, because right now this function is designed to ex- accept a URL and a Chrome driver instance. So suppose if you have thousands of functions and you decided to change the browser, then you have to change that thing in thousands of those functions. You have to change the driver reference variable type on in those thousands of functions. So to avoid this problem, what we generally do is we use a feature of Java called upcasting. So how we will do the upcasting here? Instead of storing it in the same reference variable type as driver instance, I will simply store it in a reference variable of type Webdriver. And here what I'm doing is called upcasting. Because if you will look at the inheritance structure of Chrome driver or Edge driver or Firefox driver, then these classes parents or the classes themselves are somewhere extending a class called a remote WebDriver class. And that remote WebDriver class is implementing this WebDriver interface. So that is the reason why we are able to, change the, like, we are able to create an instance of Chrome driver and store it in a reference variable of WebDriver type. This concept is called upcasting. So here, what power will it give me? I can create any driver and it will not throw error. So instead of writing or making it very rigid, instead of using exact driver instance reference variable type, I will simply use this WebDriver reference variable. See, now this code is generic, right? I can use any browser. I just need to change here that, okay, I want to use Firefox browser now. So I will use Firefox driver, and the code works same for everything, right? And if now I have hundreds of function, then the code will not get interfered just because I want to run it in different browser. So this was the flaw that we are having. The actual outcome of this discussion is that whenever you are creating an instance of any driver class, store it in a reference variable type of WebDriver. This is generally considered as a good practice in automation world just because it enables us for cross browser testing.